1240.
This is Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, AM 1190, and AM 910. This is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. The show we talk about technology and quite a bit more. NASA is forming a rather unprecedented coalition to search for alien life on other planets. And of course, this is being done with tax money. You know, it's being paid for with money which comes from directly from our wallets. But hey, you know, who doesn't want to find some aliens out there, right? Well, according to Extreme Tech, one of the foremost exercises in astronomy today is the search for alien worlds and ultimately the existence of life beyond the planet Earth. To date, astronomers have found more than 1,800 exoplanets using a variety of techniques over the past 20 years, like the transit method and gravitational microlensing. The search also got a pretty big boost back when the Kepler Space Telescope was launched. The data from Kepler alone has provided over 1,000 of those 1,800 confirmed exoplanets, with thousands of additional candidates waiting in the wings for further study. Now, I mean, it's worth noting, too, that there is some money coming from, say, investors. You know, SpaceX will donate a certain amount of money. There will be different contracts and that sort of thing. But again, a lot of this money is, you know, tax dollars. So it's really up for a debate now. You know, is this a proper usage of taxpayer funds to be funding space races and that sort of thing? Well, it puts me in a difficult situation to answer that question, because on the one hand, I really do like the idea of exploring space and all that sort of thing. But on the other hand, I really don't want the government to be doing it. I don't want my money to be used for it, I suppose, because now we're talking about a situation where my money is involuntarily being used for a purpose which I don't necessarily approve of being done by the powers that be in this particular case, because I don't necessarily approve of the government doing the space exploration. Now, if it was SpaceX or Virgin Galactic or whatever, I'd be fine with it. But it's not. It's a entirely different company. It's not even a company. It's NASA. It's an entirely different entity that really has no bearing on any sort of, you know, PR. There's nothing at all going on like that. It's a government entity. And so it's at the whim of Congress that all these different things occur. So it seems to be a little bit, well, it's a difficult situation, like I say, because on the one hand, I do like space exploration, but on the other hand, I don't like it when the government spends my money. So it's sort of difficult. So I guess really space exploration should be left up to the private sector, because it's not like we don't have companies which are trying to do this sort of thing. I mean, there is SpaceX and there is Virgin Galactic, so it's not like there's any lack of people who want to explore space. But anyway, it turns out that NASA is going to turn this whole finding exoplanets thing up another notch. The agency has announced that it's bringing together experts from a variety of scientific fields in a new coalition to search for alien life on planets outside of our solar system, dubbed NEXSS, or Nexus for Exoplanet Systems Science. The new group plans to study the various components that make up an exoplanet, along with how each one interacts with its neighboring planets and parent star. This interdisciplinary endeavor connects top research teams and provides a synthesized approach in the search for extraterrestrial life and all that sort of thing. So now the spooks are trying to find aliens. It's kind of a weird situation that we've been put in, where we, on the one hand, I really do like the idea of space exploration, but on the other hand, I really don't like it when the government does much of anything, because there might be somebody out there who does not approve of this, and yet their tax money is being spent on it. So it seems like people are being forced to pay for a product which they don't necessarily want, which is not actually any surprise when you think about it, because a lot of people are forced into that situation anyway, because they're taxes which are involuntary, which are spent on different things which you may or may not approve of. You know, healthcare, just as an example, where I don't necessarily approve of the new healthcare system. So why then is my tax money being used to fund it? Well, that's sort of bringing up a whole can of worms, where we're talking about consent and what is force, and is any form of taxation a form of theft, and all these different situations, which really are a much broader discussion than what we can get into right now in Digital Drive. But anyway, drones have been seeing quite a lot of usage in just the past few weeks and years and days. We're seeing a lot more drones being used, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, what about using a drone to follow your kid to school to make sure that nothing happens? Well, that's what one guy did for his daughter. In fact, it's in the great state of Tennessee that this happened. A Tennessee father followed his 8-year-old daughter home to school, or rather to school, with a drone, and he's now decided to ground it in the wake of the attention that his flight garnered. According to WVLT in Knoxville, Chris Early decided to launch a drone to monitor his child's walk to school after she requested that she be allowed to walk on her own. So the move got some local media attention earlier this week, and other news sites picked up on it. Time magazine even dubbed him the world's most embarrassing dad. He says, it was something kind of fun to do just to let her know that I'm watching her and stuff like that. He told WVLT, saying, it's not something I'm going to be doing every day. Well, there's video footage that appears to show the DJI Phantom 2 taking off. He did not want to respond to Ars Technica's request for comment, of course, but he's sort of local. Knoxville is kind of close. Dad was following his kid to school with a drone, which if he had tried to sell that footage would have been a federal crime, by the way, and he would have been fined some hundreds of dollars for following his kid to school with a drone, because you can't do that. How dare you? It's always that situation that you get faced with too, where you do something that it seems like just an innocent bit of fun, and then you get slapped with federal fines. Like the time I tried to drive a tank through the National Guard Armory, and I got thrown in jail. Well, it's weird. It's just stupid. All these dumb things that are crimes. Like, ooh, I shot a gun inside Walmart. Better throw me in jail. I hate it when stuff like that happens. No, in all seriousness, though, that's usage of a drone is evolving. How we think of drones is evolving. How we're using them is evolving. Where it used to be that drones were just sort of an idea of, well, the government's going to use drones to blow up people who we don't know anything about, and is going to evidently, according to new reports, kill hostages and an American without any sort of due process. Whereas now they're being used for recreational purposes, and they're actually quite a bit of fun. So drones are being used for quite a lot of different purposes. But unfortunately, we're being left in the dust by the lack of proper, well, I guess a lack of regulation, or maybe too much regulation, really is the problem with these drones, which we have now, where you cannot in the United States fly a drone for commercial purposes without some sort of special permit that you get from the government. Ooh, thank you very much, Mr. Government. Thank you so much for your for my permission to do things which shouldn't even be a crime. You see, here in the States, because we are a free country, you have to get permission to fly a drone for your business. So in this great free country of ours, you must get special permission in order to fly a drone for delivery purposes or whatever. So that's why we have a sort of a stagnation in the market now, with there being an incredible lack of drones for delivery purposes. So why is that? Well, the FAA is wanting to make different manufacturers and different retailers get special licenses in order to fly drones. Amazon, of course, is a company which we all know has been wanting to use drones for quite a long time. Actually, we've been talking about that for, how long has it been now? 2-3 years. They've been talking about having drones for delivery. Unfortunately, that's not going to be happening anytime soon because of FAA regulations, which they said there would be allowances for flying drones for commercial purposes by 2015. Well, guess what year it is? And the year's almost half over, and we still don't have any evidence of that ever happening. So go figure. As it is right now, there's no evidence that drones for commercial purposes are going to be available for us anytime soon. Thank you, FAA. In other countries, however, that's not at all the case. In Canada, you can fly drones for commercial purposes, even for testing purposes. In the European Union, they treat them like a small aircraft, and they're governed by those rules and regulations, which is fine. And that's how it should be, you'd think, here in the States. But that's not at all how it is. You cannot fly a drone at all for commercial purposes. That is a crime. What they determine to be commercial seems to vary as well. It's really weird what they determine to be commercial, because one person was attempted to be struck with fines when he used photos that he took with a drone in a video, which he put on YouTube and put ads on. So they saw that as a commercial usage of a drone, and they tried to fine him a bunch of money. The FAA did. But is that really commercial usage of a drone? Because you'd think that that would be like, say, like a commercial license for a truck, where you're driving your truck for specifically for personal gain. So you have to get a commercial license, all this nonsense. You'd think that's sort of how they would try to do it with drones, but that's actually not at all the case. It's very weird, the regulation which they've put on drones. And really, of course, I always advocate for a lack of any sort of regulation. But if you're going to do regulation, at least do it right, do it in a smart way. And of course, because it's the FAA we're talking about, that's not at all happening. It's very bizarre, the situation which Amazon.com has been put into, where they want to, over at Amazon, the folks at Amazon want to deliver stuff to your house within 30 minutes, but they can't because there's this regulation, which is putting a lot of stagnation. It's not allowing for any sort of growth in that particular field, where right now we could have drone delivery, we could have objects delivered to our house within 30 minutes of ordering it, but we can't. That's simply not a feasible option. Although I have heard tell that in Atlanta they do have a system through which people will deliver objects to your house just via delivery car in Atlanta. So that's one way to go about it, and that's certainly a fine way to go about it. But aren't drones so much cooler? That's just such a cool thing. And we have other countries which are surpassing us simply because of our ridiculous regulation. And that keeps being the case, where controls are stopping regulation, or not regulation, but are stopping any sort of innovation. We have these controls which are being set on the market, which prevent there from being any sort of meaningful growth in much of any field. For instance, there's such a high corporate tax here in the States where companies are wanting to move to other places, move to Bermuda where there's a tax haven. You'd think that the land of the free and all that would be a tax haven, but that's actually not at all the case. Where if you're paying over $100,000, $200,000, something like that, if you're getting paid a certain amount of money, you have to give away half your money to the state. Why? Because I happen to make more money than most people, why should I have half of my money taken away from me? Oh, because you have to pay your fair share. That's always the rhetoric. It's always fair share, trying to guilt you into believing that you're doing the right thing by giving away half of your money, actually being forced to give away half of your money. So it's not really charity because it's sort of a forced thing. It's this climate that's really killing the domestic market here in the States, where you'd think that the United States would be this, the pinnacle of a free market where everyone can buy and sell and trade freely without any sort of government intervention. And that's really not how it is at all. We're up there with the rest of the different countries around the world. We're up there with the European Union with tight controls on different things. Fortunately, we still do have some allowances here where we can buy guns and such. But even then, there are strict controls on that. Not so much in areas such as the South, where we value our weapons quite a lot, where guns are just part of our culture and have been for hundreds of years now. I grew up in a house where there were guns, and fired my first weapon when I was but a wee lad. Way back in the year 1999, I was firing a gun on my dad's lap, and everything was fine. There's no danger there any more than there is driving a car. It's just an expected danger. It's just an expected hazard of living. And it seems to me that that's part of another problem, where people don't understand that there's just a hazard of living. There's a hazard involved in existing, and people so want this protection. They so want to be protected by some entity, some state entity, or some created nonprofit entity to protect them from the everyday ills which happen just walking down the street. I could walk out the door right now and a meteorite could streak down from the skies and kill me. And there's no sort of government intervention which could stop that from happening. There's no police power that could stop that from happening. There's no Iron Dome. There's no missile defense system. There's no nothing that could save me from that terrible fate. Or driving down the road and a drunk driver crashes into me. He's a first-time offender. There's nothing that could have been done about it. Nothing whatsoever. Now, of course, you could make the argument, well, we could put breathalyzers in cars in order to start them. There's always going to be a way to circumvent these things. Trust me. All you need to do is get a can of air and pour a certain amount of CO2 in it, a certain amount of moisture, and blow that into the thing, and it'll detect that you're good to go. There's always different ways to get around these technologies. Trust me, there's always a way to get around these different technologies that are designed to keep you safe. And in doing so, actually just add more hassle to our everyday lives. So then we're raised, or not raised, but then we're faced with this problem. Don't you want people to be safe? Don't you want there to be regulations so that people can be safe, so that when they're driving down the street, they aren't hit by a drunk driver, so that when they're walking down the street, they aren't shot by a gunman who's firing a fully automatic AK-47. Well, the fact of the matter is that somebody who can actually afford a fully automatic AK-47 probably isn't somebody who's going to be using it to fire upon a group of people on the streets, because those are very expensive items, thanks to regulation. Also, it's worth noting that, again, there's always a hazard. There's always a danger when you're walking down the street. There's always a danger. So why try to prevent the inevitable? It's just a fact of life that there are dangers. No amount of regulation is going to solve that problem. And that's part of the problem, though, is that people have this idea that they need protection, they need help from some sort of state entity. And that's probably how the Patriot Act got passed without much of any protest. Well, unfortunately, the state is looking to renew that, or rather, the Senate is looking to renew the Patriot Act. We have new reports now just coming out from Ars Technica showing that the Senate is moving to renew law allowing for bulk data telephone metadata collection. So the Patriot Act is going to expire June the 1st, and I really hope it does. But there's now a bill to extend that all the way out to 2020. So by the time how old will I be in 2020? I don't actually know how old I'll be in 2020. Let's see, I was born in 1995, so I'll be about 25 I'll be about 35 in the year 2020. I'm going to be an old man in the year 2020. I'm going to be really old. So I really don't want there to be some sort of new Patriot Act all the way out to when I'm 35 years old. I'm going to be really old by 2020. And I really don't want there to be some form of a new regulation that's going to allow for the government to spy on your cell phones and spy on all these sorts of things. So who is the spearhead of this operation? Who is spearheading this effort? Well, the legal authority enabling the National Security Agency's bulk telephone metadata collection program, which, of course, former NSA contractor Edward Snowden exposed 2 years ago, is set to expire June the 1st, but not if Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and others have their way. So our good buddy in the House, or in the Senate, he's the Senate Majority Leader, in the Senate, our good friend Mitch McConnell, a famed Republican, one of the most popular ones out there, is looking to renew the Patriot Act. So why are these people who are claiming, right, to want to uphold our freedoms and wanting to protect us and uphold our liberty and all that sort of thing, why are they wanting to suppress us so much? Well, obviously because they don't care. But the Republican from Kentucky announced, or rather introduced, the legislation on Tuesday that would allow the once secret program authorized by Section 215 of the Patriot Act to continue out through the year 2020. McConnell invoked a rule that bypasses the usual committee vetting process, enabling the bill to go directly to the Senate floor, where a vote has not yet been scheduled. So the measure, which immediately drew criticism from privacy advocates and some few members of Congress, allows for the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to essentially rubber stamp government requests for so-called business records held by just about any institution, including the phone companies, interpreted to require the telcos to cough up millions upon millions of calling records about their customers. It requires them to provide the National Security Agency with the phone numbers of both parties in a call, calling card numbers, who uses a calling card anymore? Calling card numbers, the length and time of the calls, and the International Mobile Subscriber Identity Information number, or whatever, for mobile callers, or the ISMI number, or IMEI number, all that stuff. The NSA is keeping a running database of that information, saying that it runs queries solely to combat, of course, terrorism. You can literally get away with murder so long as it's done in the name of national security or counterterrorism. You can go out and murder an entire village as long as you can convincingly tell people that they were all terrorists. It's easy to do. It's not difficult, and it happens every day. So what can we do to combat that? Well, really the best way, because the Patriot Act renewal is probably going to pass anyway. I mean, let's face it. We have a bunch of morons in the Senate. These people don't look out for our interests. They are voted in by people who don't know anything about voting, and they just vote for whoever they recognize on the ballot. Oh, I recognize that guy. He's got my vote. He's a Republican. He's got my vote. And somebody else go, oh, he's a Democrat. He's got my vote. It's super easy. All these guys get voted in because it's name recognition. It's proper marketing. Market yourself the right way, and you too can be a senator. It's all a matter of marketing. Doesn't matter what your views on things are. Market yourself the right way, and you too can be a senator. It's easy. So what can we do to circumvent this? Well, really, actually just circumvent it. Encryption. That's the best way to do it. Now, unfortunately, the feds don't want you to have that either. More on that in a second.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing about my...
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
Host News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local.
You do not have to be living with constant pain. You need to make the choice today to enjoy a revitalized body. You deserve to live a better pain-free life. And Dr. Ross can help. At Ross Chiropractic, failure is not an option. For over 40 years, Dr. Ross, a graduate of the prestigious Palmer College of Chiropractic, prided himself in helping and healing. The Ross method of chiropractic care is unique in developing a treatment designed just for you. And Ross Chiropractic makes this promise to you. If he believes that he can help relieve your pain, he will guide you to another health practitioner to assist you. Feel better now. You owe it to yourself. You really do. Call Dr. Ross now at 954-9591. That's 954-9591. And visit Dr. Ross at 7405 Shallowford Road, Suite 320. Ross Chiropractic, helping your body heal itself. Because when your spine's in line, you will feel fine. Call 954-9591. That's 954-9591 for Ross Chiropractic.
If you have the DTs, the shakes, because your phone is on the fritz, you have nomophobia. You need help. Your telecom doctor is in. Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall. Cell Surgeon yanks open the ribcage of your phone, pries out the dead heart, and puts in the beating life that you lead on your cell phone. Broken screen, phone not charging, water damage, battery given out? Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall next Old Chicago Pizza. Check us out on Facebook. Open Sunday. Cell Surgeon. We bring your phone back to life.
Pure, honest, fair, and respect. Just some words that come to mind when you think about how you want to be treated. And that's how you're treated at Rivermont Pure. Rivermont Pure in Rivermont, Chattanooga. Serving your vehicle needs for over 30 years.
Now that's a long time.
Owner-operators Charlie and Tommy always put your needs first. Yeah, go ahead. Get an estimate from one of those big guy impersonal car repair chains.
No way!
Then bring it to Tommy and Charlie at Rivermont Pure. Chances are they'll beat their price and get your vehicle back on the road faster than you can say.
Our customers come first. Hi, this is Charlie.
And I'm Tommy, owners of Rivermont Pure. We're here to serve you.
Rivermont Pure, the auto repair guys. Featuring ethanol-free fuel. Located across from Rivermont Elementary on Hickson Pike. Rivermont, Chattanooga. Rivermont Pure.
Rivermont Pure, that's where I've always gone to get my car serviced. My husband and I trust Charlie and Tommy. They always treat us right and give us a fair price. And they get the job done right the first time. Thank you, Rivermont Pure.
Call 485-3375. That's 485-3375.
They say you can always tell a Texan, you just can't tell them much. But you can try. Cowboy Up with Texas on Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 Eastern. And he comments on the day's events. So, agree or disagree, call in and tell a Texan.
Do you feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts, Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu. A tragic admission from the White House about the fate of two hostages.
Based on information and intelligence we have obtained, we believe that a U.S. counterterrorism operation targeting an al-Qaeda compound in the Afghanistan-Pakistan border region. Accidentally killed Warren and Giovanni this past January.
President taking full responsibility for the operation, which killed the American and Italian, saying they had no information hostages were being held at the compound. The White House also revealing a separate operation killed 2 Americans working with al-Qaeda. In Ferguson, Missouri, the family of Michael Brown filing a civil suit in the death of the unarmed black teen killed by
A
police.
St. Louis County grand jury and the U.S. Department of Justice cleared a white police officer of any wrongdoing in the shooting death which led to violent protests.
Fox Radio's Jeff Manasso, Fox News. We report, you decide.
This is Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, AM 1190, and AM 910. I'm Russell. Here's what's happening. And also, this is Digital Drive, the show where I talk about technology and quite a bit more also. So the Patriot Act is going to be up for a renewal, unfortunately. It's kind of like one of those annoying things where they keep asking you to renew, like, oh, please renew, and you just don't want to do it, man. It's like you're trying to get rid of old cable service, and they keep trying to, they call you up on the phone, oh, please renew. I don't want it. Stop trying to get me to get this crap. And that's what's happening, exactly what's happening, actually, with this bulk telephone metadata collection that would be a part of the renewal of the Patriot Act. I'm not sure, actually, why it's called the Patriot Act. Well, actually, no, I am. I am sure why it's called the Patriot Act. The reason is there's a climate that's trying to be created, and actually is sort of being succeeded in being created, which is this idea that you are being patriotic as long as you help out the government. That's the height of patriotism, right? The height of patriotism is to be the person who gives up his life for your government, is to be the person who helps out the government at every cause and at every case. And that's the pinnacle of patriotism in this new view that they're trying to push on people, hence it being called the Patriot Act. Plus, people will back anything that's called the Patriot this or that. People say, oh, it's Patriot this or that. Of course I'll do it. Are you in favor of the Patriot Act? Oh, of course I am. It's kind of like the Affordable Health Care Act. And I hate to make that parallel because there's not a show about the Affordable Health Care Act. But it's kind of like the Affordable Health Care Act, where there was a Q&A that was recently, man on the street sort of thing. I don't recall who did it, but it was a question and answer sort of thing where just a man on the street where they go up and say, are you in favor of Obamacare? And they say, no, of course not. I can't stand Obamacare. And they say, are you in favor of the Affordable Care Act? And they say, yeah, I actually am in favor of the Affordable Care Act. I do like that one, but not Obamacare. And that's sort of the same thing that's going on here, where if it was called are you in favor of the Telephone Metadata Collection Act? And they say, no, of course not. Well, are you in favor of the Patriot Act? Well, of course, I'm a patriot. You see, it's the same sort of thing that's happening here, where if you just tack on some sort of buzz phrase, and people will go for it. So if you tack on the word patriot onto just about anything, then people will go for it. Where, say, people who are against the Tea Party movement, they wouldn't call them the Tea Party patriots. But people who were for the Tea Party movement every day, anytime you talk about the Tea Party, oh yeah, the Tea Party patriots. It's the same sort of thing. You tack on a phrase that's favorable, of course people are going to be arguing for it, and people will defend it to the last. So if you tack on the word patriot onto just about anything, then you can probably get it done. If I had a bill that would allow for the immediate execution of anyone who questioned any sort of, or anyone who questioned the invasion of Iraq, as an example, if you ever thought, had a second thought about the invasion of Iraq, then you are going to be thrown in jail. We'll throw you in Guantanamo because obviously you are consorting with the enemy. If you don't agree with this war, it's actually unclear war is more of a conflict. If you don't agree with this counterterrorism operation, we'll throw you in jail, and we'll call it the what should we call it? We'll call it the Welfare Insurance Act. We'll call it the Anti-Terrorist Protection Act. And obviously people are going to, oh yeah, I want to be protected against terrorists, so they'll vote for it. It's the same sort of thing. Then people aren't going to read it. People don't read. People can't read. A lot of people actually cannot read. We have high school graduates who cannot read books. We can't write their own name. So it's really no surprise that this sort of thing goes through. Now, why am I talking about this? How does this even affect us, right? I mean, what does this have to do with us? I'm just a guy who is just a guy. I'm just a guy. I'm a regular sort of guy. So are you. We're just regular guys. We want to be left alone. Well, that's sort of what it comes down to, though, is we want to be left alone. That's why this affects us. Normally, national issues are just, okay, whatever. And people say, oh, there's increased protections for police against allegations of police brutality in Washington, D.C. And you say, okay, so? What does that have to do with me? That's in D.C. And D.C. is barely part of the United States anyway, right? That's the mentality, and it's pretty much correct. But if we're talking about, say, this, like the Patriot Act, where this really does actually affect everyone, it infringes on people's rights to privacy. And now we're starting to have sort of a paradigm shift where now you say, oh yeah, this does actually affect me quite a lot. And it does affect you and it affects me. If this was just something that I thought was bunk and it's just nonsense, it's not worth even talking about, I wouldn't discuss it here. I'm not the sort of guy who's going to be all about, we need to be afraid. We need to be afraid. That's not the correct response to this sort of thing. You keep hearing all the time, people are like, we need to be afraid of the government because such and such, or we need to take arms against the government because such and such. That's not necessary. What is necessary, though, is a cautious view of what is actually going on. And this is not some right-wing, far crazy conspiracy theory, Jesse Ventura, Alex Jones watching on the late night on History Channel sort of thing. That's actually not what's happening here. This is well documented. It's in Ars Technica, for heaven's sake. I mean, how more mainstream can you get? It's in Ars Technica right now about the re-enabling of the National Security's bulk telephone metadata collection program, which Edward Snowden exposed 2 years ago. So now it's going to be set to expire on June the 1st, but not if the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and others have their way. This leads to another problem, and I guess this is sort of the hyper-political digital drive, where this leads to yet another problem where people have this name recognition thing where they say, oh, yeah, I recognize the Republican Party. Obviously, they're going to do the right thing, and I'll vote for them. Well, that may have been true sometime. No, actually, that was never true. That may have been true back in the 1980s. No, that wasn't true. Okay, you may think that, but you are wrong, and here is why. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is a very, very prominent Republican. And yet he's in favor of the Patriot Act, which is actually not very patriotic at all. It's an infringement on many, many rights. So why then are people saying, the Republican Party is going to help us out? Oh, okay, maybe they didn't that time. Bush infringed on a bunch of our rights. What am I going to do? I'll vote for the Democratic Party this time in this election. So now you have Obama. Now the next one who's probably going to win is going to be Jeb Bush. And you say, well, I'll vote for Jeb Bush. Obviously, he's not going to infringe. Of course he is. Every one of them are. That's just how it is. That's the nature of the party system. It's basically designed to infringe upon you, right? Of course the parties are going to mess with you. That's just how it is. So it's of no surprise whatsoever. But people are duped into thinking that, well, if I vote for a Republican this time, it'll be okay. Republicans obviously value your rights, when actually that's not true. And I'm not saying that as a Democrat because I'm not one. I don't like either party. I am a firm believer in a no-party system. A lot of people get very up in arms about that idea and say, how can you not like think about this prominent Republican who did a good job? He did a good job not by merit of his being a Republican or by merit of his being a Democrat. He did it by merit of his character, which has nothing at all to do with what party you belong to. Trust me. The Republican from Kentucky, our good friend Mr. McConnell, introduced the legislation late Tuesday that would allow the once secret program authorized by Section 215 of the Patriot Act to continue throughout the year 2020. By which time I'll be 35. I will be very old in the year 2020. I'm going to be ancient. I'll be an old codger. I'll be sitting on my front porch with my shotgun, and I'll be like, well, the Patriot Act is still going on. The year is 2020, and I'm 35 years old, and I'm very upset about the Patriot Act, and I wish it would just not be renewed in 2020, and the world's falling apart around me and all that sort of thing. That's going to be me in 2020, because I'll be 35. I'm going to be old. I'm going to be an old, mad person. I'll be upset about everything. I wish I could have been in the Senate to vote against the Patriot Act Mr. McConnell passed. Well, McConnell invoked a rule that bypasses the usual committee vetting process, enabling the bill to go directly to the Senate floor where a vote has not been scheduled. But don't worry. These guys are upholding our rights, right? The Republican Party has our best interests in mind. This is a free country. This is a free country. I have to keep reminding you. This is a free country, by the way. This is a free country where bills are going to be passed to infringe upon your rights. It's a free country. So the measure, which immediately drew criticism from privacy advocates, no kidding, and some members of Congress, allows the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to essentially rubber stamp government requests for so-called business records held by just about any institution, including phone numbers and phone companies, I should say. They interpreted to require the telcos to cough up millions upon millions of calling records about their customers. It requires them to provide the National Security Agency with the phone numbers of both parties in a call, calling card numbers, the length and time of calls, and the International Mobile Subscriber Identity, or ISMI, also known as IMEI, which is the International Mobile something identifier. I can never remember what the E stands for, but you get what I'm saying. The measure comes as some members of Congress are moving to limit the snooping program. Senator Patrick Leahy, who is a Democrat from Vermont, said that McConnell and his co-sponsor, the Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman Richard Burr, will not succeed. So the U.S. Patriot Act is something which has been sort of on the forefront of a lot of controversy. A lot of ill will has been brought towards the Patriot Act, and of course, you know, it's not really going to go anywhere, is what this guy is saying. He's saying, you know, the U.S. Patriot Act, so many people know how bad it is that there's no way the Patriot Act is going to pass. Well, he says, despite overwhelming consensus that the bulk collection of Americans' phone records under Section 215 of the USA Patriot must act, or act must end. Tongue twister there, right? Senate Republican leaders are proposing to extend that authority without any change. Republican leaders should be working across the aisle on legislation that protects both of our national security and Americans' privacy rights. But instead, they're trying to quietly pass a straight reauthorization of the bulk collection program that has been proven ineffective and unnecessary. And more, they are attempting to do so without the committee process that Majority Leader has promised for important legislation. This tone-deaf attempt to pave the way for 5.5 more years of unchecked surveillance will not succeed, he says. I will oppose any reauthorization of Section 215 that does not contain meaningful reforms. And also 2020, I'll be 25, not 35. I have my numbers all mixed up in my head. So by the year 2020, I'll be 25 years old. I'll still be very angry, and I'll still be on the radio being very angry about the passage of the Patriot Act. Now, I guess another question that should be asked is, does it actually make a difference if the Patriot Act is passed and if the FISA courts get their way? Well, the Patriot Act being passed again, actually, I can't say with any certainty that the Patriot Act not being passed would actually make a whole lot of difference. And that's the difficult position that we've been put in, or actually we've put ourselves in now, where the Patriot Act simply is something that's probably here to stay. And even if it's not, the NSA is still going to be there. You know, it was authorized under 215 of the Patriot Act, but guess what? There's probably going to be some other bill they'll pass that'll make sure that the NSA stays authorized and that bulk data collection still happens. That's just how it is. That's the federal system. From the very inception of a state, it immediately starts degrading. Think of a state, actually, a good way to put it is think of a state as like a person. And of course, upon birth, you're immediately dying. That's actually just how it is. That's how organisms are. Upon inception or conception, they are immediately degrading. You are dying as soon as you're born. That's just how it is. States are exactly the same way. As soon as a state is founded, it immediately starts degrading. Because as soon as a new regulatory process goes through, the state has started degrading. The state is now attempting to infringe upon your rights. The state is a forever evolving thing, but not for the better. And this is further evidenced by, of course, now we have the Patriot Act. Now there's NSA. There's all these different agencies. There's an NRO, all sorts of different agencies which are basically designed around infringing upon our privacy rights. So it's no surprise at all that that these different agencies and these different intelligence programs and all these sorts of things are, of course, going to be infringing upon our rights. This is a natural process of a existence of an organism that's called a state. That's just how it works. That's just how it is. Of course, your rights are being infringed because there is a state. That's just how it is. There's no way around that. So is this a doom and gloom story about, oh man, the state is just... the U.S. government's just messing me up, man. You know, I keep hearing about the U.S. government and how they passed the Patriot Act and they're spying on all of our cell phones, man. It's just, what are we going to do about that? It's just terrible. Well, should we live in fear and be afraid of the government and say, you know what? I need to watch what I say on the phone. I need to be careful. All this nonsense. No, that's not the proper way to go about it. The best way to go about it is actually to point and laugh, because the federal government, as much as we've been talking about how bad they are, they're also very bad at self-governance. So the federal government is very bad at actually doing their jobs, period, because it's become such a convoluted process of bureaucracy and further regulation. And, oh, this has to happen for that to happen, and there has to be Senate approval for this to happen, and there has to be some form of oversight committee for this to happen. It's such a bulky and such a monstrous system that can't possibly keep on going for much longer, that there's not actually a whole lot to worry about. It reminds me of the Onion article. And I know the Onion is a satirical news website. I know it's a joke. But one of the headlines kind of struck me as very funny, which was Al-Qaeda's new devious plan to sit back and watch the collapse of the United States from their living rooms. And that's actually kind of what's happening. Now, I'm doing exactly the same thing, but not for the same reason, not because I want there to be some horrible catastrophe where people die and there's martial law and there's people being gunned down in the streets for their dissenting views. That's not at all what I want. But what I do want is for a rebirth, perhaps a phoenix effect, where there's a collapse, but from a collapse we can rebuild something much better, or better yet, build nothing whatsoever and just allow for there to be a lack of state or a lack of system. That's the better alternative. That's actually kind of the free market alternative, where we can recognize this this problem and say, well, you know what? I don't actually want your help. They say, you can get a sort of a stimulus, you can get a boost. If you hire 5 local employees, we'll give you $5,000 for each of those local employees. Instead of accepting that, saying, man, yeah, the state's going to help me out. Instead of that, the local economy process is saying, no, I don't want that. Actually, I don't need your help. Thank you very much. I can run my own business, and I'm actually a better businessman than the state could ever hope to be. Pardon me. And that's the better way of going about it, is simply ignoring the whole state process and saying, you know what, I don't need you. I don't need your help because I'm a business person. I can run my business the way I want to run my business. I don't actually need the help of any state to ensure that business keeps going. There doesn't need to be some state program for local stimulus. I tell you what, the best form of local stimulus, the best thing the state could do for there to be stimulus of the economy is absolutely nothing, is to just pull out. And then there'd be the best stimulus you ever see, where there's a deregulated economy and people are coming in and say, man, there's a super low corporate tax rate in the USA. Guess what? It's 0%. Let's move our business there where we're not going to be taxed. And guess what? Now there's influx of product. There's all these different things that are helping out people. And it's, what do you know? It's a better situation than it was before. Well, there's a perfect example of the opposite of that happening with the Comcast-Time Warner Cable merger, where it's actually looking more and more doomed every day, where it's looking like Comcast and Time Warner are not going to be merging because, thank you, the FCC is looking at killing that. So the Department of Justice is not the only federal agency, according to Ars Technica, that appears to be skeptical of a merger of the nation's 2 largest cable companies. The Federal Communications Commission is reportedly close to a procedural move that would make it very difficult for Comcast's purchase of Time Warner Cable to be approved. So, according to the Wall Street Journal, FCC staff has decided that the commission should issue a hearing designation order. In effect, that would put the $45.2 billion merger in the hands of an administrative law judge and would be seen as a strong sign to the FCC that doesn't believe the deal is in the public interest. The Journal wrote saying that, attributing the information to anonymous sources, saying a hearing could be a drawn-out process, and some regulatory experts describe the procedure as a deal killer, though Comcast would be entitled to make its case for the tie-up. So it's appearing now that the Time Warner and Time Warner Cable and Comcast merger is not going to be happening. Now, there's a pretty good argument to be made. I will admit, there's a pretty good argument to be made that Comcast and Time Warner Cable shouldn't be merging at all, because this leads to a monopoly system where there's, these 2 giant corporations which are simply too powerful to exist. They're simply too powerful. Look at these giant companies. Well, actually, and this is a controversial view, but it seems to me that the reason there's an allowance for such a huge companies is not because of a lack of antitrust lawsuit, but it's actually because of different municipalities and different local governments getting in bed with these different companies, saying that, Comcast will be exclusively existing in this particular area. We'll say the town of Nowhere Land, where in Nowhere Land, we've struck a deal with Comcast to have tax breaks, and they're going to move in, and there's going to be fast cable for everybody. And people say, yeah, all right. And then T-Mobile wants to move in, and guess what? The state municipality says, well, we already gave a tax break to Comcast. Sorry, citizens of Nowhere Land, there can be no competition here. We shall only have business with Comcast. And that's what's been happening to allow for these different companies to get so huge, is they're getting in bed with the different municipalities to get preferred treatment on the side of the state, on the side of the municipality, on the side of the city, the town, whatever, the jurisdiction, the township, all the different legislative areas and the zoning and all that sort of thing. That's why these companies have gotten so big, not due to lack of intervention, but actually due to such a great amount of intervention, where, yet again, it's an example of the state just getting in the way of true progress, which would be a diverse economy, which, of course, we can't allow for because this particular senator is on the board of this particular company. And that's what's happening to hinder growth. It's not because of any lack of regulation. It's actually due to regulation that we have these problems. Well, eBay is about to lose its growth engine. Speaking of growth and growth going away, eBay is about to lose its growth engine called PayPal. So eBay and PayPal are actually getting ready to split apart into two separate companies. According to The Verge, it may hurt eBay's bottom line, but the company just announced its Q1 2015 earnings, and while the overall business was healthy, net revenue was up 4% last year, or rather has been up year over year. There are signs that the spinoff of PayPal later this year might be kind of painful. PayPal today is one of the strongest parts of eBay, and eBay's payments revenue, which PayPal is the key component of, grew 14% year over year, by far the healthiest of eBay's three current business divisions. But revenue from eBay marketplaces, the traditional eBay storefront we've all come to know and tolerate over the past few decades, declined 4% year over year. That's a relatively small decline, but as noted by Mr. Mike Isaac at the New York Times, it's also the first time that marketplaces revenue declined since Q3 of 2009. So it's not a trend that eBay expects to change anytime soon either. Revenue from marketplaces is expected to grow between 0 and 5% in the coming year. Meanwhile, PayPal revenues are expected to rise 5 to 18% in 2015, and it's not a great trend for a company that won't have PayPal to prop it up anymore for very long. So is this the collapse of eBay, perhaps? Well, not necessarily, because there could be some guy who comes in and says, some Elon Musk or some Bill Gates who comes in and says, I'm going to help out eBay with some of my own personal money, some personal stimulus, and help out eBay and make it to be a better company. Or I have a plan for eBay that's going to make it a much better company than it was previously. So PayPal's not going anywhere. Trust me. PayPal is going to be around for probably at least another month or so. That's my long-term prediction, because in the tech sector, that is a very long-term prediction. If we're talking about a month, that's eons in the tech sector, where they say this phone is going to be the latest phone, it's going to be the greatest phone for the next week. And that's just how it is in tech. Unfortunately, for a lot of people get very upset about the quick-moving tech industry. That's just how it is, folks. Tech moves very quickly. So what can we do about it? What should be done about it? Absolutely nothing. We shouldn't do a thing about it except for buy what we think is the best product, because that's the best way to do things. People are saying, I keep hearing constantly, don't you want there to be regulation on this or that? Don't you want there to be a prevention for some sort of economic catastrophe? Don't you want the government to protect us from some sort of economic catastrophe? Well, no, actually, because anytime the government has anything at all to say about any sort of economic situation, it always ends up poorly, where it's just always going to end up poorly, no matter what. Oh, the government's going to bail out GM and allow for, corporate money is going to go, or state money is going to go to GM to protect us from this terrible situation where GM is going to go bankrupt. Well, you know what? In the corporate system, GM should have gone bankrupt. If they can't hold themselves up as a company, they should go bankrupt. That's the natural process of things. It's unfortunate. You might call it Darwinism. I would disagree. I call it just the natural way of things. But the way things happen is, if a business can't keep itself propped up, it's going to fail. So why would you put the thing on life support if it's a failed concept? It doesn't make any sense. It's like a person who's effectively dead. This person is brain dead. They're not breathing, whatever. You have them propped up on life support saying, no, they're going to get better. They're going to get better. No, they're not. It's going to fail. That's just how it is. That's business. That's the marketplace. But something that does not fail and doesn't really see much of a collapse is actually the local economy, because it's easily propped up. It has people within the local area to prop it up with money, with the transactions, with word of mouth. All these different things lead to a wonderful and diverse local economy, which we are fortunate to have here in Chattanooga. Nuganomics.com and David Toast is coming up.
You do not have to be living with constant pain. You need to make the choice today to enjoy a revitalized body. You deserve to live a better pain-free life. And Dr. Ross can help. At Ross Chiropractic, failure is not an option. For over 40 years, Dr. Ross, a graduate of the prestigious Palmer College of Chiropractic, prided himself in helping and healing. The Ross method of chiropractic care is unique in developing a treatment designed just for you. And Ross Chiropractic makes this promise to you. If he believes that he can help relieve your pain, he will guide you to another health practitioner to assist you. Feel better now. You owe it to yourself. You really do. Call Dr. Ross now at 9